What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The Unova region gave us a lot of Pokémon, but as I only discovered in the Dual Types video, most of them are actually a single type, which did make it a bit harder since that narrows the pool of Pokémon that already have two different types for us to look at. But as always, there are Pokémon that have multiple different qualities that cannot be contained with just the standard dual typing. So let's see what Gen 5 Pokémon could be the best candidates for having triple types. We'll start with number 6, Seismitoad. The worst things that someone could say about Tympole is that it's just a copy of Poliwag, but then it has to go and evolve, and then things snowball out of control. Palpitoad is one of the worst middle stages in all of Pokémon. It does sort of get a consolation prize of gaining the ground type, which combined with water makes a great pairing that resists fire, poison, steel, rock, and is immune to electric, with its only downfall being a 4x weakness to grass. It really is one of the best, because it's easily predictable, and also, like any good water type, Seismitoad can have coverage moves that easily take care of grass types. However, one of the most common on this specific Pokemon are poison moves. Not as much through level up, but a ton from outside means. And it does fit with being a frog, since many of them are notoriously toxic. Poison is weak to Psychic and Ground, while it resists Grass, Bug, Poison, and Fighting. That's pretty good too, but combined together, these three types would cancel out to a regular Grass weakness with Psychic and Ground, and it makes resistances to Fire, Bug, Fighting, Poison, Steel, Rock, and an immunity to Electric. This works out pretty great, actually. Not only does it gain extra resistances, but the grass mitigation is huge, on top of gaining stab poison moves to deal with that type. Not to mention the water easily covers the new ground susceptibility. So since the sound type isn't a thing, I think the Seismitoad family could get the poison typing, especially since there wasn't a whole lot of poison already in such a big region. Number 5, Scrafty. So here's the thing, I've talked about how I don't really like the Scraggy line before. They're just a little too out there for me, and they don't really embody their typing all that well. To me, it seems like one of the worst examples of Unova just making Pokemon for the combinations first and design ideas second. Although the fact that Fighting and Dark are my two least favorite types probably doesn't help. But that being said, Dark and Fighting isn't actually the worst. It is weak to Flying, Fighting, and quad weak to Fairy, which is my third least favorite, but it resists Ghost, Rock, quad resists Dark, and is immune to Psychic. So I don't really know if that works out in its favor, but what else could this lizard thing be? Well, to me, it would probably make the most sense to at least try the Dragon type. Not everyone might agree, but this strange lizard could pull it off, and it gets at least half a dozen powerful dragon moves, so bringing this typing to the Hoodlum Pokemon would make it an even better sweeper. So when brought together, these three would be weak to Dragon, Flying, Fighting, Ice, and then 8 times weak to Fairy, but it would resist Water, Ghost, Rock, Electric, Grass, Fire, quad resist Dark, and is immune to Psychic. So that's a lot on the defensive side, but that fairy threat could be a pretty big problem, so you might want to be sure to keep that poison jab coverage, as it might be your only hope to survive with this humanoid dragon. Number 4, Bravery. At the other end of the spectrum, I love Bravery. I usually forget all about Unpheasant because to me, this is the bird that comes to mind when I think of Unova. But you would be hard-pressed to find a better Pokemon to represent the normal and flying combination. It does have some common weaknesses, but also with 2 immunities that helps balance it out. However, Bravery is no ordinary bird. This thing is not only inspiring, but also incredibly muscular and physically combative, so my vote would be for adding the Fighting type. Bravery has attack through the roof, and it even learns fighting moves, so I think that this would be a good fit, with the weaknesses to Psychic, Flying, and Fairy, but resistances to Bug, Rock, and Dark. So when you put all 3 of them together, it would make Bravery weak to Electric, Psychic, Ice, Flying, and Fairy, but it would resist Grass, Dark, quad resist Bug, and be immune to Ghost and Ground. So at least the Rock would cancel out, but it also creates a great counterpart to the new Hisuian version that becomes a Psychic type, while at the same time providing Bravery a resistance to its Dark version exclusive pair. So I would say that this is pretty perfect for our proud eagle friend. Number 3. Swoobat. This might not be a Pokemon that you think of immediately. In fact, I think this is probably the first time that I've ever even given it a featured spot on the channel, but I do think it's actually a good candidate for this endeavor. Now, currently Swoobat is Psychic and Flying, and it's really not the best type as it's weak to Rock, Electric, Ice, Dark, and Ghost, while it only resists Psychic, Grass, Quad-resist Fighting, and is immune to Ground. But what else could be done to help improve this friendly bat? In my book, I would say the Fairy type is the best ticket. These Pokemon are tied to hearts and love, and if you had to give that a type, you would say Fairy, right? The fact that it evolves through friendship is just further evidence of this. And Fairy only has 2 weaknesses with more resists, but they don't hugely overlap with Swoobat's current typing. So together they give weaknesses to Electric, Steel, Rock, Poison, Ice, and Ghost, with resistances to Grass, Bug, Psychic, and 8 times resist to Fighting and immunities to Ground and Dragon. So the Dark did cancel out, but it's kind of a weird setup that all of the types would be divided into thirds between effective, neutral, and not. But given the fact that there is a whopping single Fairy type in all of Unova, I think that giving it to Swoobat would be a great fit for this Pokemon and for the region as a whole. Number 2. Saucebuck. I'll cut to the chase. Having the Deerling line be the first Normal and Grass types was a pretty good idea, but they could have done so much more. Rather predictably, Normal and Grass don't interact, so all of their strengths and weaknesses, and immunity, remain when thrown together. But Saucebuck is more than the sum of its parts, because it was the lone Pokemon to interact with the seasonal changes that Gen 5 brought to the franchise. Granted, this was immediately discarded, but that didn't stop Saucebuck from having 4 distinct forms, allowing everyone to pick their favorite. So, what does it need as a third type? Well, you may have guessed already, but I'm not sure that 3 types is enough. Saucebuck would still have 3 at a time, but I don't think that the third type would remain fixed. I mean, just look at my favorite, the Winter form. You're telling me that shouldn't be an Ice type? As we know, Ice isn't all that great, so when we put it together with current Saucebuck, we see it becomes weak to Steel, Poison, Flying, Bug, Rock, and actually 4 times weak to Fire and Fighting, with resistances to Water, Grass, Electric, Ground, with an immunity to Ghost. So at least the Ice canceled itself out, right? I'm not saying that this is good for Saucebuck, but it's pretty cool. And for the other seasons, I think Fairy could suit the Spring version. I would say maybe Fire for the summer's hot sun, and then maybe Ground for when the leaves fall in autumn. That would leave the Spring version to be weak against Fire, Flying, Ice, Steel, and quad weak to Poison, with resistances to Grass, Electric, Water, Dark, Ground, and immunities to Ghost and Dragon. The summer version would be quite different, only being weak to Rock, Poison, Flying, and Fighting, and it would resist Steel, Electric, Fairy, Quad resist Grass, and be immune to Ghost. Then the autumn version would be weak to Fire, Bug, Fighting, Flying, and quad weak to Ice, but resist Rock and Ground with immunities to Electric and Ghost. I'm not saying that all of this would help Saucebuck necessarily. Ideally, these probably would have been shifted between these excess types and then just create a bunch of different normal combinations, but I do think that it would help to give this Pokemon a nice sprucing up after its one meaning for existence got revoked. Number 1. Stunfisk. It's rare that a perfect storm arises to create such a dislikable Pokemon, but such is the case for Stunfisk. It's a flat, ugly pancake that wallows in the mud just waiting to trap people. And what's even worse is that it actually has a decent unique typing in Ground and Electric. This provides the thing with weaknesses to Grass, Water, Ice, and Ground itself, while making resistances to Flying, Poison, Steel, Rock, and an immunity to Electric. So it's kind of balanced overall. But as much as I don't like this thing, I do think that it has the best claim to not only fit a third type, but need it. And no, I don't mean the Steel typing from its Galarian form. According to the Dex and the game itself, Stunfisk can be found in and around the water. Now, I know just because a Pokemon has an aquatic lifestyle doesn't mean it has to be a water type, but when its whole thing is burying itself and waiting, I would hope that it could be able to at least breathe underwater, not to mention the fact that it's compatible with more water moves than some actual water types. So given that water is only weak to grass and electric, with resistances to fire, ice, steel, and water itself, this actually turns out really well for Stunfisk, because together they have weaknesses to ground and a 4 times to grass. That's it! That leaves resistances for flying, fire, poison, rock, and a quad resist for steel with an immunity to electric. It's great because with only 2 weaknesses, the new water type could handle the ground threat, with new improved defenses on top of that. There are plenty of Pokemon that could be triple typed, but I don't think any Pokemon, at least from the Unova region, needs it more than Stunfisk, because this thing really needs all the help that it can get. So, those are the top Unova Pokemon deserving of triple types. Which Gen 5 Pokemon would you give 3 types? Some of the legends? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!